Greetings and welcome to the Neurotheology YouTube channel's Reasons to Read series. In this episode, I'll talk about Dr. Lisa Miller's The Awakened Brain. Now, this particular book, there are many reasons to read it. One, Dr. Miller, she was the editor of the Oxford Handbook of Psychology and Spirituality, so she's really a leading expert. Martin Seligman, one of the founders of positive psychology, says she really the leading psychology expert of our time. So she's highly regarded. She's a professor and researcher at Columbia University. But this particular book, The Awakened Brain, she's talking about how our spirituality really helps us. It guards us from depression, from anxiety. And she talks about what an awakened brain is. So I'll just read for you her definition of an awakened brain. She defines an awakened brain as a brain that includes a set of innate perceptual capacities that exist in every person through which we experience love and connection, unity and a sense of guidance from and dialogue with life. And when we engage these perceptual capacities, when we make full use of how our brains are built, they become structurally healthier and better connected. And we access unsurpassed psychological benefits, less depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, and more positive psychological traits such as grit, resilience, optimism, tenacity, and creativity. So she really connects through research how our spirituality guards us from depression and anxiety. So as a leading researcher, her saying these things, I think, really shows how our spirituality is enormously beneficial and helpful for us. One of the research projects she does, she uses fMRI research data where she draws people to do a spiritual narrative, where when we think about something that happens in our lives, what happens is our neurons fire in the same way as if that experience is happening in that moment, like we're reliving it. And so you can see in a person's brain, as they're reliving a spiritual experience, what actually happened at that same time they had this spiritual experience in their brains. So there are four things she found from this particular study. One is that the default mode network is deactivated. I have a video on this channel on the default mode network. Our default mode network largely helps us with daydreaming, ruminating, helping us envision the future, think about the past. But if we get stuck in a cycle of ruminating too much, we can fall into anxiety and depression. So having a spiritual experience helps draw us out of ruminating on the past or having anxiety about the future, where we're more present. So that was one of these four findings she finds in this fMRI study about spiritual experience. Another is that our ventral attention network is also activated. Instead of our dorsal attention network, and when we talk about the brain, if you say dorsal versus ventral, dorsal means upper and ventral means lower. So our dorsal attention network is our executive function, say our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. But she's talking about our ventral network, our lower brain, where our attention of our ventral network is more unconscious. It's more like flashes of insight, less about our working memory. So that activation of this awareness, a different sort of awareness. She talks also about the activation of our frontotemporal network. Our temporal lobes give us a sense of semantic knowledge, helping us understand ourselves in relationship to others. So that frontotemporal network being activated in spiritual experiences helps us to feel relational bondedness. But the fourth point she talks about in this book in terms of a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, is having a deactivation of our parietal lobe and an activation of our posterior cingulate. And what those two things do is basically give us a sense of self, but it also blurs our sense of separateness from other. So it's having a distinct sense of self, but also having a connection with all and not having that sense of separation from all. So those are four particular things she found in this one study. So that's just one study in this book. She talks a lot about different spiritual exercises, experts she's talked with that have different spiritual practices that help us find more healing, more wellness. But those are just several reasons to read this book. Brilliant book. She has others that I would recommend, other research articles. I hope you find a lot of strength through this. I myself am an Episcopal priest, but also a chaplain, so I value connecting even in our differences. As an Episcopal priest, I have a website called ChristianNeuroscience.com that has a lot more resources for you. If you're a Christian looking for neuroscience to connect with your body and more purpose and meaning and more love. If you are not Christian and you are looking for a connection to your sense of spirituality, I have spiritualneuroscience.com that has more scholarly but also interfaith resources, Buddhist, Jewish resources. So those are a lot of other resources out there, but I recommend you highly Dr. Lisa Miller's The Awakened Brain. Thank you for being here, and I hope you find more joy, more love, more peace through these resources and others. Take care.